Did the UConn women's season meet expectations? We'll find out. You're locked on.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Before we dive into today's show, I want to take a moment to say how thankful we are for all of you out there that listen. We support, we love that and appreciate your support. I had such a great time in Connecticut over the last couple of days where people were coming up to me, telling me how much they love the men's show, how much they love the women's show, commenting on the contributors, one that we'll have on today, like T, Bella, anyone else that kind of helps behind the scenes in the show, Dan Meehan, Henry, all these guys. It's just been so great to kind of connect with UConn fans over the last month or so. And to show our gratitude, we're giving back. We're donating 10% of our revenue to Husky Ticket Project, helping send kids to UConn games. Special shout out to them and a special shout out to my everydayers out there. Today's episode is brought to you by the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay with us for the Armada Team of the Week later in the episode. All right, let's bring in T. He is actually right at Mohegan Sun, in the bowels of Mohegan Sun, if you will, just trying to, give us some time and some perspective on this UConn season. I'm going to jump right into it, T, and then we can talk about, what you're up to later today with covering the games. Did the UConn women's season exceed, meet, or fall below expectations, and why?
Hey, Mark. Happy to join you again today. So for me, I think that UConn met expectations. I think that from my perspective in particular, like the youth on the team was something that could have been a little bit of a question mark. I think Paige obviously is the All-American player that she is. We knew that she was going to be who she is. I don't know that we knew necessarily what Sarah Strong was going to be, but I think she met the hype of the type of player that she is and probably exceeded it if there's one player that did. But I would say they met expectations. I don't think that we're living in a women's basketball landscape where they win out, go undefeated. No team has gone undefeated. I think that their wins, have been pretty good against top 10 teams or top 25 teams when they've played them. Some tough losses, but overall, I think this team met expectations. And I think that going into the NCAA tournament, they're in a good position to, make noise, maybe get to a Final Four. So I wouldn't say exceed. I wouldn't say they dipped below my expectations, but I think they met them. Yeah.
I think for me to answer that question, when I read through this outline and we talked a little pre-show, I'm gonna veer from the rules a little bit. I think they didn't meet expectations until they beat South Carolina.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like you think about just the arc of the season of getting to that point where it was like, well, UConn's not beating any good teams. And, forgetting about the fact they beat a top 10 North Carolina, forgetting about the fact that they, won some games early. Yeah. And then you get to that point, and then it was like a total dismantling of South Carolina on the road and breaking that 71-game win streak. So I think it's a great question. And I think I'm leading to below until they got that South Carolina win. And now, and then I agree with everything you said after that. They're, all is right in the world. Paige is back to being her efficient self. Geno even made fun of her because she missed a free throw, saying it was Oscar night and she overacted, blah, 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 right? Azzi looks like the scorer that she's always wanted to be. And Sarah's met tons of expectations. So, yeah, I think I would kind of teeter on below, but then boom, man, it's so that's kind of the way this season has been. Do you agree with that at all?
I think I do agree with it. What sticks out to me as you were speaking is that the early season losses that UConn sustained, which were USC and Notre Dame, were games that Azzi Fudd was largely unavailable. So
sure.
I think if they had her at full strength, which she hasn't been full strength until the last couple of weeks, and now we see it kind of the lethal shooter that she is. But that's why it's a season, right? There's ups and downs. There's players in and out of the rotation. I think that had the team played, later in the season when Azzi was at full strength, I think we could have had very different results. And that USC game came down to some Sarah Strong free throws, right? So they were right there with USC. I think the Tennessee game was a little bit of a fluke. I think Tennessee is a great team that can frankly beat anyone on any night. Like they got, smacked by Vanderbilt, but that's the landscape we're in. It's a competitive landscape. And I think maybe UConn just got a little overwhelmed by the orange, some traumatic memories from Summit days when they went down there.
I said this to, and I'm going to give him a shout out. There's a really big fan of the program. He's out in California. Huge Paige Bueckers fan. He's got my first name and my son's name as his name. His name's Mark Victor. He's going through some stuff. I think he's battling cancer. So I'm giving him lots of love and some good juju, positive vibes his way. But one of the things that I talked to him about, I was actually driving back from the airport, and we had like a little conversation about 30 minutes. And it's really hard to hate on 28-3, right? It's really hard to just kind of completely take away from anything that this team has done. And one of the things we talked about the Tennessee game, because we talked about a bunch of stuff, is the Tennessee game in particular, it's almost like they were due, right? Like that felt like Tennessee was just due to break through against UConn. They hadn't done it in a while. So I chalked that up to that. And you're 100% right about not having Azzi and some of the players that weren't available. I think it's a different story, but a loss is a loss, right? And until that South Carolina game, you really couldn't hang your hat on one specific win. So take that out of the equation. What's been the most surprising or something that's really stuck out to you this year outside of that 30-point win in Columbia?
I mean, for me, it's got to be Sarah Strong. I knew she was good. I didn't know she was like first team All-American good, which I think she makes a good case for because she's a freshman. I didn't know she was going to on some nights be the best player on the court next to Paige Bueckers. So, in terms of like exceeded expectations, Sarah Strong exceeded them, and I'm happy she did not go to South Carolina because I think that game would have played out very differently. But look, she's a baller. She's going to be here. Hopefully there's no transfer. Nothing would indicate that, but we live in a different landscape. But I was just absolutely blown away by how she's played from the beginning of the year till now, and just the upside that player has, I think, is just going to be something that's very exciting and special to see over the next couple of years.
When I was in stores, the game ends. The Marquette in UConn men's game. I'm walking across the court to go to the press conference, and I see Jana, I see Aubrey, and I see Caroline. And so my biggest surprise, maybe not jaw dropping, but was Caroline coming back, because I didn't think that she was going to have an opportunity, and I'm so happy that she's able to. And all I said to the three ladies is, who all tower over me. They were sitting down, which was nice because I could look at them like almost eye level. And I said, I want you to introduce myself. I don't know if you know, I do Locked on UConn. I was wearing a Locked on UConn like shirt or something like that. And I just said, I hope you guys make it to the Final Four because I want to go to Tampa Bay and cover it. And so they all said, oh, thank you so much. And then that was it. But like, to me, it's got to be Caroline. And then I would drop back to Aubrey having an impact this year that I think is going to be phenomenal. And I know I'm kind of adding on to this stuff, but I don't know, man, like the addition of Aubrey and KK in like a press has been like a revelation for Geno from a defensive standpoint. So those would be like the two or three things that I would point to are just like blown me away. Like the defense that they're playing right now is championship level.
Yeah. And they get there. They get there every March. Like I always have these images in my head of when UConn shows up at the Big East tournament, their defense is locked in, they're communicating, they're moving. And so, yeah, I mean, those players you mentioned, I think the other piece of this is like one piece that's underrated. And then I want to know what you think kind of has been an underrated aspect of this season. For me, one thing we're not talking enough about is how Ashlynn Shade and KK Arnold come off the bench.
Yeah.
And like, those are two Final Four players. They were starters last year. Ashlynn Shade just won Big East sixth player of the year. So to me, that's been the part that we're not talking about. It gets lost in the Azzi, Sarah, Paige piece, but you have two sophomores that are starters on just about any other team in the country that come off the bench and add a different element at that media timeout, at the first timeout where they just kind of blitz you. Ashlynn Shade, when she's shooting well, is lights out, and KK Arnold like is the best defender. She's the heart of the team, right? So it's incredible to me that they come off the bench, and I think that's a huge X factor that we don't talk enough about. What about you? What's something that's underrated on this team?
I agree with you on that. I would agree, but if I'm going to go different, I think when I did the story on Caitlin Chen, I thought she could be a bigger impact. But you know what I love about her is that the reason why I know that they brought her in here now that I've seen her play for a full year is she doesn't need the spotlight. She also does not care. And she's an older, more mature player. So she's never going to, her energy level never drops. She's going to work hard no matter what. And so she was like a perfect fit to kind of be in here. And even though she didn't, initially kind of mesh with everything, that's just growing pains. Like I think she's an underrated, unsung player, and she's not averaging a great percentage of points or rebounds or assists. But on some of these bigger games, you can count on her. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and she's kind of been that steady rock. And I think that's what's been the most underrated thing for me. If you discount what you said about KK and Ashlynn coming off the bench, I think that I would go there.
Yep.
All right, real quick, we're gonna come back and we're gonna talk about this. We're gonna talk about UConn's path to the Big East title. Is it going to be Creighton in the title game? Both teams are undefeated against the rest of the Big East, and we'll look around the country and predictions for the Power Four conferences and what that will do for UConn's seeding after the break. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth-quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I'm missing my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use. And then when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can place $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, we're back on Locked On UConn. We're here with T. Baker, contributor to Hoops Capital of the World, and also co-host with me on every Friday here on Locked On UConn. Mark Sonetto here joining you guys, and T's joining us on location in the Big East tournament. What's the word they use for reporters in the field? Embedded with the Huskies, as they like to say. So first, before we even get into this, how's it been over there? Like, how's Mohegan? What's the crowd look like? What are the expectations for the weekend?
It's always a good vibe, Big East tournament weekend. I love it. I come right away the first day, and there's a good mix of fans that followed their school here. So like we have some local teams here, St. John's, Providence, teams that can get here in a pretty easy drive. So I like to see the fans from the schools. I love that each team brings their band and their cheerleaders because they're kind of this like duel that happens across the court. So I just love the energy. It feels higher stakes. The coaches are yelling. Everyone's kind of trying their best, right? It's win or go home. So I love it. We just watched the St. John's game. So now we know that St. John's is UConn's opponent in the quarterfinals. Mm-hmm. They played a pretty good game against Butler. They got a good team. Coach Joe Tartamella coaches a good team. They beat UConn a couple years ago. So he's always good at putting together a roster, typically of transfers. And he did that again this year. And I think that it'll be an interesting matchup tomorrow to see. It was a good first game. St. John's beating Butler.
Someone asked me this question, and I didn't know the answer to it. So I'm going to ask you this because you mentioned transfers and you mentioned St. John's. And we'll talk about the St. John's and how they match up with UConn. But this is more of like an after the year comment. But I don't know. Let's just roll with it. Why do you think Geno has been reluctant to go heavy transfer?
I don't know if it's reluctancy or if he's just able to get the best players out of high school, so he doesn't have to go that hard in the transfer portal.
Fair.
That's part of it. But I think also he's been clear that he only wants to really get players who are in their grad year. I think Geno's a little bit old-fashioned in that way. He's like, stick it out, stick the commitments out that you made. So he's less likely to get a player. I think Avina Westbrook was one of the rare exceptions a couple years ago when she left Tennessee, which was scandalous at the time, right? Going Tennessee to UConn. So I think part of it is he gets talent out of high school every year. Doesn't have to look as deep in the transfer portal. I think the other part is that I think he values players who stick it out, who at the point where they can move on after graduating, after giving their 4 years to a school, want to move on. So I think Caitlin Chen's a good example of that. Dorky Uhas, she I think left a year before graduating, but was at the tail end of her career. So I think it's a combination of being a little bit old fashioned and just having incoming freshman talent.
That's fair. And honestly, I answered something similar. You sounded a lot more eloquent when you said it to a friend of mine who asked me that question. But I just wanted to, I don't know, that's just popped in my head because you mentioned that.
I do think there's an opportunity to go deeper in the transfer portal. I mean, I think one area that UConn has needed over the past several years, a big time transfer is in the post. They almost got Reagan Beers, but she went to Oklahoma. I think that could have been a real game changer. So I think this year, one of the things that I think should be an off season, something that the team is looking into is getting a post player from another Power 5 conference.
Also, who is advising Reagan on her opportunities? Her last name is Beers, and it's Connecticut. Yeah. And the NIL opportunities alone on her last name would have been through the roof. I know the SEC's got money, but it's UConn women's basketball. Let's be serious. Paige would have set her up with her team. It would have been great.
I was bummed about that one.
Yeah, that'd have been great. So let's talk about championship week. I don't think UConn's going to have an issue in the Big East tournament. I think St. John's may give them a little bit of a run, just because, like you said, they're a well-coached team. They beat them a couple years back. Do you see them having any hiccups before potentially facing Creighton in the title game?
I don't really. I think, like I said, this is the time of year they really lock in. They've shown all year that they're just kind of like outclassing some of the other teams in the Big East. And I think, the thing about the Big East, and I was just talking to another reporter about this, is there's so much parity below UConn and Creighton. Those teams are so evenly matched. So there's a lot of really good basketball being played in this tournament. But I think UConn's just on a different level right now. And the talent and the depth is really just going to kind of stick it to a lot of the teams that are here this week. So I don't really see them stumbling much. Like you said, I think it would be interesting if St. John's went on some runs, kept it a little bit close, but I don't see it being anything that UConn can't overcome and win probably by double digits in all the games. Okay,
fair enough. I don't disagree at all. Nothing to talk about there in that regard. Let's talk about the rest of the country though. Who do you think is going to win these conference tournaments, and how do you think that's going to impact seeding not only for those teams but for UConn?
It is just a lock jam, a traffic jam at the top. So I think there's a lot of interesting things to keep an eye on this weekend. We have the SEC tournament. I think it's going to come down to Texas and South Carolina. I do think South Carolina is going to pull it out. They are the SEC veterans, and I think that they just have some revenge to get on Texas. In the ACC, I am picking North Carolina State over Notre Dame. They beat them at home, and I think that NC State team is just real tough. I think they could give Notre Dame kind of a run for their money again. So speaking of those two specifically, I think the Notre Dame and South Carolina are the other two seeds competing with UConn right now. So I think should both of them win, I think that kind of keeps UConn in the 2 line. Should one of them lose, I think UConn is a higher 2 seed or could potentially move up to the 1 line. I think Notre Dame is the team that's just kind of been a little bit inconsistent lately. It's hard to know if they're a 1 or 2 seed, but if they lose, which I'm predicting they will, I think that benefits UConn and they can kind of hop on up. And then as for the Big 12, I'm predicting TCU, which won't have much of an impact on seeding. TCU is not really in the top 2 seeds necessarily. And then Big 10, I'm going to go UCLA. I think they might pull it out and beat USC. It's hard to beat a team 3 times in a row. And I think that one's tough. I mean, I think UCLA and USC still both have a case to be 1 seeds, but if one of them stumbles, which one of them will have to stumble, that potentially opens up the opportunity for UConn to take one of those last 1 seeds.
Okay. I have Texas, in a coin flip with South Carolina. The only thing that makes me pause about that is the amount of people that are going to be there rooting for South Carolina, considering it's in Greenville. It's not on South Carolina's campus, but it's the stone's throw.
The satellite campus.
Yeah, it is. It's exactly. This is and that's fair. But I just something about Texas and how they match up with South Carolina. But either way, I think that's going to be the best tournament game. But I would put ACC up there too. I mean, NC State has been playing great, and I love that pick but it's hard for me to not pick Notre Dame. So I'm not going to pick either of them. I'm going to say North Carolina is going to be the upset ACC winner.
Okay.
I love that team. I saw them in person. So maybe it's just, a little bit of bias on my part, but I don't know. There's just something about them. I know they lost to Duke, but ACC is a lot tougher than I thought on the women's side. So I'm going to go North Carolina with the upset tournament win. Then I agree with you on TCU. I think Baylor is going to give them a tough game. I think that's going to be the final, but I'm going to go with TCU on that. And then I'm going to flip it. I think USC is going to beat UCLA a third time. I think they're going to. I just think they're quicker. I think that's the bottom line.
Yeah, I mean they looked pretty out of it on their own court in Pauley Pavilion. So I mean it's a neutral floor, but I think Juju Watkins has fans wherever she goes, so it might be pretty loud for USC. It'll be a good game no matter what. I hope it'll be a good game. The last game wasn't great. Corey Close, UCLA coach, was pretty pissed. But we'll see. We'll see how it plays out.
For sure. All right, before we get to the next segment, I want to comment on UConn seeding. I don't have any issue with any of the seeds right now, but I do have an issue if UConn, who's number one in the net, is 28-3 and has that head-to-head win over South Carolina. Even if South Carolina wins the SEC tournament and they're the last one seed on the fourth line there, and UConn's the fifth ranked team in the country because they're number 3 in the country right now, according to all the polls.
Yep.
I don't see how you can lock them out of a 1 seed. Like it would be very almost disingenuous. Like, why are we playing that game then? Like, what was the point? That would be my comment.
So do you think the same for if Notre Dame and UConn are battling for the last 1 seed? Do you give it to Notre Dame because head to head?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, nothing pisses me off more, whether we're talking basketball, football, baseball, whatever it is. People like you and I shouldn't be voting on who's the better team. We just saw who the better team was, at least in that moment. Yeah. And I know you can say, if you're a UConn fan or you're objective, you could say, well, Azzi didn't play. Cool. Sarah Strong played. Paige played. I mean, they have two of the top 10 players in the country, and they didn't beat that team, and they lost by 10. It wasn't the USC game is a little bit more cut, a little bit more. You could waffle a little bit. All right, Azzi was available, but not really, and USC had a big lead, but they only won by 2, and it came down to the final possession. So if you're UConn and you're a UConn apologist, maybe you go, all right, but we would have won if we had Azzi. Okay, I could see that. The Notre Dame game, I don't think it's as cut and dry. So if Notre Dame and UConn are neck and neck, you got to give it to Notre Dame. There's just
agree.
Sorry, I get off my soapbox now and move on to the next topic. All right, we're gonna. I talked about meeting a couple of the seniors, and of course Jana at the game over the weekend, and we're gonna talk about the impact the seniors and the UConn legacy and their legacy that they brought to UConn coming up after the break. We're all about the stats because numbers don't lie. When it comes to the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X, the numbers are an MVP level type. With the ability to tow up to 8,500 pounds, it can quite literally carry the whole team, plus the gear and wherever you need to go. It's powered by a twin-turbo V6 engine, delivering the strength and performance to handle highways, back roads, and everything in between. And with room for 8 people, the Armada Pro 4X is built for big crews, big adventures, and even bigger memories. Whether you're exploring off-road trails or rolling up to the arena, the Armada Pro 4X brings power, versatility, and style wherever you go. Take your adventure to new heights in the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X. Learn more at nissanusa.com. All right, we're back on Locked On UConn with your host, Mark Zanetto here. And also, we bring in every Friday T. Baker, contributor to Hoops Capital of the World Substack, and the next Big East beat reporter covering the Big East tournament in Mohegan Sun. Have you seen Colleen yet, or is she not there?
Not yet. I think Colleen's going to be coming tomorrow for the first UConn game at noon. So looking forward to that. Colleen
is she is our Locked On UConn and Hoops Capital of the World beat reporter for the weekend because Colleen does a lot of stuff for us. I'm giving her a shout out because she's amazing. She does content behind the scenes. When I was in stores, there was this amazing picture I got of Alex Caravan and I wanted to use it as a thumbnail. And I said, could you put, this is at 11:30 at night, by the way. And she has multiple kids and she's just phenomenal. And she said, she was like, yeah, I'm up. I'll do it. And so she put together this great Canva template and I was able to put it up. I actually showed Alex because she did that. I was able to show him in the press conference, and the guys who were on stage got a big laugh at that. So if you see her up there, give her a shout out, give her some love. She does a lot of great stuff for Locked on UConn, and she writes some wonderful pieces in the Hoops Capital of the World. So seniors, Paige Bueckers, Aubrey Griffin, Caitlin Chen, Azzi. What is your lasting impression of those? You can go in order. You can talk about all of them or one of them. Either whatever your fancy is about the legacy that they brought to UConn.
Well, let's start with Paige Bueckers. Going to go down in UConn history as one of the best to ever, put on a uniform here. Every season she's been healthy. They've gone to the Final Four. She just had her number put up on the Huskies of Honor for first team All-Americans, 2,000 points, fastest player to get there. Again, one of the best to ever do it. And I think that it's really unfortunate how injuries have impacted her career because we've missed so much time of seeing her on the court. And that season where she was out the full season was just heartbreaking. You see someone who just loves basketball so much and can't do what they love. And so, I mean, one of the best players to ever play at UConn, absolutely deserves the Huskies of Honor. And, I think she lives and exists in stores where the standard is a national championship, which in a lot of ways is unfair. But we'll see if she gets there. I think championship or not, she's still one of the best players to ever play at UConn. And it's been just a real privilege to see her. I think she's also someone who took UConn into this NIL era. She's the face of NIL in a lot of ways. And it's just been really impressive to see how she's handled that. She's, pretty much just mauled by fans everywhere she goes, the hotels, and she handles it with such grace. She handles it with gratitude. And so, one of the best on and off the court, and we've been lucky to see her play.
Yeah. First time I ever saw her play was this year, which is so wild to me because she's been around forever. And I just haven't I've never been until this year covered things, but also I've said this to some of the people that go to all the games, whether it's men's or women's, and have season tickets to both or whatever. When I grew up, my family just never went to games. Like it was like a treat. Like every once in a while, like once a year, maybe when we were growing up, you get to go to the Civic Center. Very rarely do we ever go to Gamble, right? So seeing her in person was like a really cool honor, and just know exactly what people are talking about when they see her and just how she moves on the court, her pacing. It was just such a treat to cover her, at least just for that one game. And then to do it every day here. Sarah has been, to your point, I knew she was good, and I told that story about how my barber knew that she was good because Sarah Strong's team kicked his daughter's ass in the state finals here in North Carolina. Yeah, and that was a really cool story to tell. But even hearing that, because even though she had like 30 and 30 that game, that still was like, oh, okay, but it's high school. And then you see her, and she's a stoic. She's it's hard to put into words how good she is until you see her and then you watch her every day, and how nothing bothers her. Like that to me has been the biggest thing. She could write a book on stoicism. I know that's a big, that's a hot topic for people that want to get centered with their lives, right? I'm a lot crazier than people, think. People think I'm really calm, and I'm not. I'm a mess. So I could use some of Sarah Strong's stoicism, right? I think all of it's starting to come together. What about for you? Do you feel like, we talked about Caitlin, we talked about Azzi. Let's go to Azzi first. Azzi is which is the harder thing to say, right? Is Paige or Azzi the greatest what if in UConn history? Are they tied for that? And Azzi obviously still has a decision if she's going to come back. Like, what's that legacy look like? Are they both kind of tied for that what if comment when we're talking about championships because of the injuries?
I don't think so. I think Paige delivered, like she was player of the year her freshman year, willed them to the Final Four last year. Like, I think she has lived up to the hype. She has met expectations. I think it's easy to nitpick greatness because she makes it look easy. But Azzi Fudd to me is like just the player that we've never seen reach her form until recently. And I hope it stays because it's very special. Like, I remember watching clips of her when she was coming to UConn, and she's just dominant, you know, like she's one of the best shooters I've ever seen. She has great basketball IQ. She's a great defender, which is an underrated trait that she has. But we've never seen her, I feel like, at full strength until this week. And it's even uncomfortable to say because I'm afraid it's going to go away again. I feel like every time that it's been like, okay, Azzi's back, something happens. So, but watching her dominate that game against St. John's, watching her put up 30 points, like, she still got it. And that's why I don't think the Azzi Fudd story ends this year. I think she comes back. I think that it could just be me trying to manifest that. But I think another year in UConn, another year developing under Geno and CD's leadership would serve her well. And the WNBA is going to be there anyway. So I hope she stays, and I hope this isn't the end of the Azzi Fudd story because we missed so much, and I think there's so much more that could happen.
I couldn't agree more. The last thing I will say is about the seniors, because I think Caitlin has been a good addition. Like I said, she's like a rock. She's underrated. You know, Carla Berube coaching tree with or Geno's coaching tree with Carla Berube, I should say. And then the other thing I would tell you is Grandma Aubrey Griffin.
Grandma's a great way to put it.
It's a great nickname. She's been there 6 years, but I think it's hysterical. But she's also like, she just has a light about her. Like I only met her once that one time when I was up there, and you know, I said hi to all of them, and she had, you know, a big smile on her face, and just like, you know, granted now they're just hanging out at the men's basketball game, but still, she's just a great teammate. She's been a great mentor to Morgan and Allie and all of the freshmen. So I hope all great things happen for Aubrey. And I think that there's just her athleticism. I just wonder what she'd be like if she didn't have as many injuries, because she's a freak of nature out there.
Yeah,
she just
definitely
is
one of the more athletic players we've seen in UConn's history. I mean, I agree with you. When you said her smile, that's the first thing I think of. It always kind of looks like she might be up to something. She's got like a little
little Cheshire cat grin.
Yeah, and just, you know, a player who's been through so much. I mean, was here even the season that ended with COVID, right? So had to navigate that. Like, and just has done it with grace. You know, she easily could have just had a bad attitude, not showed up, but she shows up for her teammates. She just keeps things light, and you know, I think it's very special that she's the player that was at UConn for 6 years and in the most of any player, because she's such a culture fit. You know, she's the type of player that Geno and CD want, that just shows up every day, works hard, has a good attitude, and is a great teammate. So gonna miss her. You know, I wish she could stay a 7th, but that would be too much. You know,
no,
probably 2 seasons too much.
I hear you. Well, that's all we have for you today. Why don't you tell people where we can find your stuff, and then go enjoy the Big East tournament? Because one of the things I can tell you is being up there, and I'm going to miss it because I won't be going anywhere until potentially Tampa. And we'll see where the tournament lies for both the men's and women's. Maybe I can get to another game before the end of the year. But there's just something about going to a game and covering it. And I love basketball, men's and women's. So I know you're not supposed to cheer in the press box, but I kind of do. So that's just me. Tell me where you can find things for your work, T.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so I'll be writing out of the Big East tournament all weekend for the next, and then, you know, as the tournament comes along, I'll be writing following UConn, following the Big East team. So, you know, several Big East teams won't necessarily make the NCAA tournament, but still covering them in their postseason tournament. So, looking forward to it. It's the best time of year. I feel great. Can't wait to watch games all day, every day. Let's do it.
Good stuff. All right. This has been another episode of Locked on UConn. For T. Baker, I'm Mark Zanetto, asking you to stay locked in, stay connected. And remember, it's not about how you get it done. It's about doing it in a way can't be done any better. And go Huskies.